Okay. Okay, welcome to Hopeifiers. I am the acapellist. With me is Brother Scott Sweetman. Hey, Brother Scott, how you doing?
Good evening, acapellist. How are you?
I am doing well, thank you. I am doing
Excellent.
well. before I tell you, like, we go on with how we're going to introduce the show, I got to tell you though, I had a little bit of a disconcerting visit to the doctor.
Uh-oh.
I went to the doctor, had a nice visit, and he's asking me how life is, and I'm talking to him, and I'm standing while I'm talking to him, and I'm gesturing and blah blah blah, that kind of thing. And he's very engaged with what I'm telling him and that kind of thing. And he says, you know, I'm glad life is going very, very well for you, but I have a diagnosis I have to share with you. And I said, well, what's that? And he says, you have hypomania. And I said, hypomania. And so it kind of concerned me a little bit because I never heard the term before, hypomania, right? And so I was like, oh, what does that mean? And so we started talking about it, and it was just like, oh, and he says, you're excitable, you move a lot, you're kind of, you're very loud, you're vocal, you're excitable, you're kind of like on the edge of euphoria is kind of how you're functioning, kind of a thing. And I said, well, this sounds pretty good. Like, this sounds like a good thing.
Yeah.
And
It
he said,
sounds good so far.
and he says, it is, but you just have to be cognizant of other people, that if they're not kind of at the same level you are, you're going to irritate them, isolate them. You're going to turn them off if that's, if they're
Unfortunately, if
not
you were
there.
a high school kid or junior high school kid, they'd put you on Ritalin or something.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, exactly. That would be you need some drugs to cool this, bring him down a little bit. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah. When we ran the schools in Japan, one of the things that we often found is that we had to dry kids out from, kids coming from overseas from Ritalin and all kinds of drugs that were meant to, like you said, dial them down. And, fair enough. I understand that when you're running 30 kids in a classroom and stuff like that, it's a little bit difficult. But we found just by increasing the number of teachers following a European model, like in Finland, where there's more teachers per child and there's natural outlets for that energy, and you're not trying to force control. I remember I used to jiggle a lot when I was a kid, and teachers were freaking out because, sit at that desk, sit up straight, don't move. And I could never understand what that had to do with me learning history or
Exactly.
Something. Like,
I mean, if a kid can learn better hopping on one foot and still pays attention, or pays attention better doing that, great. Have the kid hop on one foot, right? I mean, it's like, I think there's we get people into boxes too much, right? That there's not enough opportunity for them to perhaps express who they truly are. And then that's kind of where some hurts happen, right? Like, that you being a jiggly kid, or don't do that, blah blah blah. So like, oh, there's something wrong with me, I'm jiggling, or like,
yeah,
you also say you like to vocalize a lot, right? Like
I do.
hum,
Yeah,
or
make
and
noise. Yeah.
that's very much a soothing kind of a self-management type practice, right? It's a healthy thing for you to do. But if it's perceived that, if you're a trouble or a bother, or there's something wrong with you, is how you perceive it as little Scott, well, then that creates a problem, right? So
it does. And that kind of brings us into tonight. And I was going to say, people who work around animals, and I'm sure Corolla has their own system, is one of the ways to get animals to calm down is to vocalize, is to, hum or talk to them in a pleasant, steady voice. And they relax, and, you relax. And of course, then that leads to positive learning environments, and, it's a good situation. So, but
makes a huge difference. You're approaching a horse and, hey buddy, it's okay, and you're like not threatening in any way, right? And you're that kind of thing, and you're calm, then they're calmer, right? Yeah. So yeah.
And I think our education system is getting a bit better. Like you say, they're realizing that not only are there different learning types, that there's different lifestyles, and I guess we're organism characteristics. Like, your doctor saying to you, you have to be aware of your impact on others, but also others have to be aware that you're allowed to be this way. that you don't have to fit the mold. You know, it's like, I remember when you first started moving on video, I'm like, well, should I try and synchronize my weaving to his, or what should we do here? And it was more about how do I react to this? It had nothing to do with you, really. I mean,
Well,
ultimately,
I know it. I know there were some people who felt uncomfortable with that. Like it was just, so I had to explain. I'm doing this, you know. It's something I choose. Actually, at the office I was at the other day, the receptionist says, "Oh, have a seat. He'll be a few minutes." And I said, "No, I prefer to stand." So then I was standing and watching my phone, or and actually went around the corner, sang a little bit, and then and then she says, like, "What? Like you can't sit?" And I said, "Well, I can, but I prefer to stand because I feel better. I have better energy, and it's physically better for me and everywhere." So, and anyway, so she was a little. It was a little upsetting to her, my behavior. So, yeah.
yeah, everyone's got sort of their own tolerance on it, right?
Yes. Yes.
So,
Okay.
but that's part of being sensitive, right? We talk about, being sensitive to people's, there I go.
Yes.
Talk about being sensitive to people's, views on religion and politics and what they identify in terms of gender and those things. But I think it goes a lot deeper than that. We have to try not to peg people into, if you want to move and talk when you're moving, great. I know some people listening to Stephen Hawkins, and of course, he talked with the aid of a computer. Some people say, I get that he's brilliant, but I just can't listen to that. It just, upsets me, and I can't listen to it. And I thought, boy, what a waste. He's definitely somebody worth listening to. And,
definitely.
Just stop trying to put him in your hole, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, even like, sometimes people with an accent somewhat, you have to kind of get even more engaged in listening, right? If you don't want to put the energy in, it's really very difficult to communicate with somebody who's got a heavy accent, right? And then, but it's worth the conversation, right? It's worth the conversation to kind of take the time and maybe ask another question or rephrase it to make sure you're understanding, right? So
I saw, and this is just quick, but for you and our listeners too, there's an app on a lot of TVs, like we use Fire TV. I think Amazon owns them. There's a bunch of different ones, but NHK has a free television service in English, and they have. It's just, you can download it for free. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe to. They have a lot of interesting documentaries, and they did a documentary on a gentleman called Kodo, and he wrote a book called The Monk in High Heels, and he's a transgendered Buddhist monk in Tokyo, and he's transgendered. He dresses very flamboyantly when he's not wearing his monk's robes, and he wears high heels, and he's also a representative for the LGBTQ plus community in Asia. He's been recognized by Time and all sorts of people. But it was really interesting that as a religious leader, how he was, there was definitely trials and things that he had to go through, but he was very accepted. And because of his work, Buddhism as an organization has moved closer to that community and been more accepting of him and, the differences that people have. And he basically quoted right from scripture in that, I've got to quit saying, but in scripture, it talks about how people dress differently and how looking good encourages people to listen to you and gain some respect. You shouldn't be shabby, and you should care about how you present yourself, because that opens more doors to people. Really interesting man, and he's on Instagram and social media. He's a makeup artist. He's done lots of Miss Universe pageants and Miss Japan. Wow. And his name is Kodo, Kodo. Kodo Makeup is where you can find him on Instagram and things. But you would enjoy it. Yeah, have a look at it. It's in lots of places, but it's definitely on NHK. The app, you can get it on Google or Fire TV. Really interesting man and woman.
Excellent.
He didn't really say his pronoun, but
yeah. let's chat about Margaret Paul, PhD here. She has this book about six secrets about profound love and self-love. And on the page 7 here, I was getting Scott there. I was going to share this because it's related to the theme I think we're talking about tonight. In that it says, before I teach you how to heal, you need to understand what healing is. You need to understand what it is that needs healing. You need to understand what wounds are. Your wounds started when you were young, when others were unloving. The rejection, the abuse, the neglect, the abandonment, the engulfment. You might have physical wounds from what was done to you, but the deeper wounds, are not physical. Your wounds deepen when the unlovingness towards you was too much for your little body and soul to manage. When the loneliness, heartache, heartbreak, grief, and helplessness over others' unlovingness was too big to manage, and you had to find ways to avoid the pain. So you learn to move out of your body and into your head to avoid the pain. And you learn to avoid and numb your feelings with sugar and other junk food, or with nicotine, alcohol, or drugs, or with TV or pornography or other addictions. Or you learn to be very good, giving yourself up, or you learn to be very bad, getting yourself into trouble, or get angry and blaming, or to resist, all to avoid the pain that you could not manage. So I think that little intro, it really kind of resonated with me, that's like, we all face this, right? We all have this, right? And we all, in one way or another, select something less than optimal. And I think because we are valuing ourselves less than optimal. Those situations that have occurred, and Corolla kind of frames shame for a person who has experienced trauma as being a devaluation. And I think that concept makes sense, right? You feel devalued because of a decision you made when you were a little person, because of somebody who had huge influence over your life, made you believe somehow that you were somewhat less. You sustain that belief in error. It's not a true belief in anywhere. You sustain that belief in error, and because you have that belief, so you believe you are not optimal, or not totally 100%, you're 90%, you're going to treat yourself 90% well. If you think you're only 70% of value, you treat yourself 70% well. And what does that mean? You smoke, and you eat bad foods, and you don't wear your seatbelt, and you do things that are not good for your health, right? Basically. And so the kind of the connection, I believe, is the more you value yourself. And I call it value instead of love, because I know some people get really weirded out about love, self-love, right? But you value yourself at the maximum, and that way the choices you make will be the optimal choices for you automatically. It's not like taking willpower. It's just, I love this body, this body temple that I get to have for this journey. I love it. I want to take care of it. I want the best thing for it, so it can function well, so that I can be the best possible version of myself in this life. So that's kind of how I think the two are connected.
I agree. I think it's a great connection. Just for our listeners out there, you sent me this whole document, so I was able to read the whole thing. Where does this come from? I mean, Margaret Paul, PhD, wrote it, but what is it? Part of a course? Is it part of?
Yeah, she has beautiful human being. She has that free ebook, but then she also has a course. I think the course is even free. Now, I learned it from, I watched her as one of the professors or instructors on Humanities Stream. And I thought, oh, wow, this is amazing. And then I saw the book, or she shared the book, said, here, the book is free. And I'm sure she even has her own study guide, but we're kind of, Corolla and I and Diane, on Tuesday night, so next Tuesday night we're back on it, are kind of studying it just for our own edification, if you will, right? It's just beautifully written, simple, clear, easy to understand, and so universal in nature that you say, oh yeah, this is my experience, this is everybody's experience, right? And how can I help others now that I see this? How can I help others see this too? So, do you freeze, Scott, or do you fall asleep? Hello?
We're back.
Oh, you're back. Okay, got it, got it. It was froze on the image of you. Wasn't sure if you fell asleep or it froze. But
No. See, for me, you froze, and so
okay,
I
good,
was,
good.
I was
Makes
waiting
sense.
for you to come back. So we were both
Okay,
frozen.
got it.
I
So I
really
don't know
like
what
it.
our viewers get then. I don't know if they get dead air or if they heard me or they like. So I don't know. Anyways, the thing I said was that's kind of the way I see this as being a very. It resonated with me, and I thought something worthy to share with others that it might resonate with them as well.
One of the things that I really like is that it's very statement oriented. There's not a lot of gray area. I mean, things are said clearly and simply and with conviction. So often when you read a lot of books that purport to be about self-improvement or healing or those things, they're couched very carefully. So there's not a point that they can be attacked on, if you will, or contention. They try and
Right.
make it happy, but this is very very clear, very simple, said with conviction and belief. And if you don't believe it, there's a clear statement that you can articulate to yourself why you don't believe it or why it's not suitable for your case. So I think that's a really strong point. Not the main point, certainly, but I think it's a very strong point in the style that's used here. It has a very matter of fact way that I think is the best way to address these topics. When we're talking about trauma and pain, we always try and be gentle, right? And not
Right.
that it isn't sensitive, but I think sometimes it's easier, especially when somebody is in a place of trauma or self-hate, self-loathing. Direct speech often is the best way to get through to that person, not in a mean way, but just without sort of all of the caveats and if and or buts and right.
Mm-hmm.
How did you find when you read it? Obviously she speaks directly to your heart or your soul when she speaks.
I just thought it was so simple and clean, and it's not, you don't. That book, I don't even know how many pages, 50 pages or something like that. Like
Yeah.
it's a simple read, but it's just like it's so clear to me from reading that we as being spiritual beings who are having this human journey, and we chose this journey, we chose to be here at this time, we chose to that you and I are going to meet, right? We chose these things, and it is for some purpose that is leading to the evolution of humanity, making it a better place for humanity, and that we, if we are fully playing our role in that then we are going to live our full and complete soul's purpose in making that come to fruition, in bringing that in birthing that and bringing it into fruition. So that's the way I see it. And I think it's kind of, you could say, no, well, that's craziness. But the fact is, if you believe it, your life becomes really simple in a big hurry, right? Whatever thing that happens, you say, this is supposed to meant to happen. What lesson am I supposed to learn from this? Why did it take me 30 days to figure out a little fuel problem with my John Deere tractor? Apparently, I had to learn a thing about patience. Apparently, I had to learn a thing about being more creative. I had to learn how to kind of view things in a different way, right? Maybe I had to learn to be more open to advice and open to asking people for different views early on, as opposed to assuming that I knew all the answers, right? So, yeah.
I've become a big believer in the concept of attachment causing pain. And that's a central idea to a lot of faiths, a lot of spirituality, a lot of religions, a lot of psychology. And we're talking about that here. And I think that, something that really struck me is that that little person becomes attached to those feelings as normal. And I think that in a lot of us, and I can say this not as anyone trained in this, but as somebody who obviously experiences these things and lives through them, is that we start to think that our self-doubt and our self-loathing is a normal state of being. And it becomes our normal. And
Right.
so anytime we start to escape from that, we feel guilty or we feel that it's not
right in some way. It feels
Right.
unusual to us.
You don't deserve it. You don't deserve it, perhaps, you don't feel.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you
Yeah.
don't deserve to feel in a better way, maybe you think. Not you
Yeah.
personally, but we, you know, that we
Oh,
think.
sure. Me personally, I think that everyone shares. I haven't met anyone who believes completely that they believe the good things in their life are deserved. And I use the word deserve very carefully, because I think that ultimately it's not a question of deserving. I think it's a question of being, right? It's not something we have to earn. That's part of the problem. When we're little, we're so used to, part of growing up is earning trust, earning responsibility, earning the right to vote. You know, all of these things are associated with maturity and growing up. And so I think that we get a culture, a mental, psychological culture of needing to earn or obtain acceptance or um, reassurance that we are correct and that we are good and that we are normal and that we are all of these things.
You know what? And part of this too, and this might have been your experience, parents not wanting to spoil their kid, want to encourage them to do things, or sometimes hold back on the praise. Like, you know, they don't want to encourage them that they try harder, right? So you kind of point out the things where maybe it wasn't perfect, you know, that kind of thing. And in that process, you know, they get a lot of perhaps not as much positive encouragement that would be helpful, right? And so sometimes what inadvertently happens is the kid hears the parent talking to their friend saying, "Oh yeah, that kid's amazing, blah blah blah, can do this, can do that, can do," and the kid has never heard this, right? The kid has never heard these positive words about them as a person, right? So I think that's kind of like, I'm sure the goal was to, you know, and motivate the child, but just it kind of didn't work that way because the child didn't know that they were doing good because they never heard it, right? Or rarely heard it, right? So, yeah.
When I was reading this, and I really enjoyed it too, but when I read it as a child, I found it very helpful and useful. When I read
Uh-huh.
it as a parent, I was like, oh, you
Uh-huh.
know, I did that. You know, oh my God, I think I did that. And you know, of course, as a parent, my anxiety went way up. I'm like, oh my goodness, you know, how much therapy are the girls going to need to have because you know, I did this, I didn't do that, or those things. So I think that there's one of the things that I knew when we decided to have children, and it was very much a decision for us to have children, is that we would forgive ourselves for not being good parents, because there are no perfect parents, and really there are no good, or well, I suppose there could be bad parents who intentionally hurt their children or neglect them on purpose, but I think that those people are a very, very small minority of people.
Definitely.
I think that most of the issues with neglect or abuse are often from personal problems that exist inside the parent. But I think that all parents need to give themselves a pass on not being perfect, because
Yeah.
kids don't come with an instruction manual, right?
No.
And I don't know how they did it in the past. So my mother was married at 18, which was normal for her time. Most
Yeah.
of her friends were married at 18, 19. She had me 2 years later and my brother 2 years after that. There was sort of a timeline that women were supposed to be on during that time, and that fit the timeline. So that's what she did. And I'm always blown away that she had me at 20, because my daughters are just turned 21. And the idea of them being parents, or worse, me being a parent at 20, I waited till I was much older to have kids. But it just blows me away. Like, I don't know how, for I guess the point I'm trying to make is, for many centuries, we've been children raising children. And people say, oh, well, you had to grow up sooner, you had to grow up faster. Okay, but physiologically, we only grow so fast. Psychologically, we only grow so fast. I mean, there's been a lot of study in that our personalities don't get set until we're in our 20s. So we really
Yeah.
are children.
Yeah, brain doesn't even fully develop until like 25, right? That's the caution
Yeah,
for young people, and drugs, that you kind of be very cautious to stay away from them until 25 when your brain is fully developed, right? Is the advice.
absolutely. Yeah. So I think that, I read through here and I think, like I said, as a child, I can see, oh yeah, I felt when my parents were divorced, I don't know, blame myself for why little Scott was convinced that somehow he had to do something to make it better, because obviously he did something to make it bad. When it had,
Yeah, yeah,
as an adult, I know it had zero to do with me.
right.
But of course, as a kid, your world is you and your parents. So everything revolves around sort of those
Sure.
relationships, right?
Yeah. And that
But
like divorce is one of the like the 10 things in the official adverse childhood experiences thing. Divorce is one of them, right? Like it's a big deal and every kid believes it's their fault, right? Like unless the parents like go overboard to explain it's not and show that it's not, they're going to believe it. The kid's going to believe that somehow they're the cause of that, right? So
well, and my
unfortunately.
parents were pretty good at that, but they, like any other divorce, there was fighting and arguing and
Sure.
lawyers and things. And um, yeah, what they said was, they said, "Oh, it's not your fault," and Dad and I still love you, or Mom and I still love you. But the next week there was big battles in court, and over all sorts of custody and money and all of those things. And so, yeah, I think that little people, it talks about pain that you couldn't manage. Uh, Again, I don't think that's just ascribing blame. I think that's just stating a fact. It's
Yeah.
impossible for children to understand complex adult relationships and put them in a healthy mindset. It's just impossible.
Sure, just like kind of at their level of development, like if you had a weight that a 5-year-old boy could lift, that whatever that is, 20 pounds, well, they could lift 20 pounds. But you throw 100 pounds, that you got to do it. They're just not prepared for that, and that way they're not prepared from an emotional or sense. They just haven't learned that or haven't been able to kind of look at that and say, yeah, there's nothing wrong with me, or maybe this is a course correction aid. Maybe that kind of a thing. It wouldn't be perceived as devaluing. It would be perceived perhaps more so as gentle correction. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And I think that one of the other things that really resonated with me in the passage you read was about numbing your feelings with sugar, junk food, nicotine, alcohol, drugs, TV, pornography, or other addictions.
Right.
And I think that addiction has been too narrowly defined in the past in
Yeah.
terms of medical terminology. I know in countries, when we lived in Japan, alcoholism wasn't considered a disease or an addiction. It didn't exist in medical textbooks. Of course, it is a type of addiction, like
Sure.
any other addiction. But society often is slower to acknowledge addictions for lots of reasons. Not usually for good reasons, but it has to be careful to manage those things. But I do know that right now there are so many things that can become addictive, video games and social media, and like we've talked about before, where companies hire scientists to pick the best food additives that are going to switch all of our buttons, and that's a mixed metaphor, switch all of our switches on and press all of our buttons, and we don't really stand a chance. It's they're using the chemical way our brain works to make us addicted to whatever product it is they're trying to
Yep.
sell.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
and
So is
and I think
that's not, obviously we have to be more, and I guess back to the whole thing about how you value yourself. And I'm not trying to make people feel guilty or whatever. It's a choice you make every time, whatever you put in your body, right? You're drinking water, you're not drinking gasoline. It's water, something that's going to fuel your body, give you good, something that you need. So that in terms of the activities we do, the thoughts we think, what we put into our mind, into our body, I think the greater that we value ourselves, the greater that the easier that becomes to make the best choices for ourselves. That's kind of the connection that I'm trying to share with that piece from Dr. Paul's and our thing about hope. Because my thing about hope is if you believe you're going to be able to meet whatever challenge comes your way, which that is true, then I think there's good reason for hope. If you believe that oh, these things are going to happen, and I can't meet, I'm not smart enough. I'm not old enough. I'm not young enough. I'm not fat enough. I'm not, whatever the thing is, I'm not, that I can't do it. But if you believe you can do it and you can challenge, great reason for hope, right? It's all going to work out. I'm going to get it, right? Might take me a couple kicks, but I'm going to get it. So that's kind of the way I'm connecting those. Does that make sense, Scott?
Absolutely. And I have a story. Imagine one of us has a story, but about exactly this point. And I remember when I found out we were having twins, and one part of my brain was over the moon, crazy happy. Another part of my brain was like, oh my goodness, how
Oh,
are we going to
no.
afford this? And all the, costing we did, times that by two. We're going to need double the diapers, double the double the double the double the double. They're going to get married. They're both going to go to university at the same time. And all of that hit one side of my brain just like a sledgehammer, while the other side was, going, yay, us. And we were, the twins had just been born, or maybe they hadn't been born yet. We were walking in a mall in Japan, and a black lady came up to us and said, "Oh, you're expecting?" And we said, "Yes, we're expecting twins." And she said, "Oh, wonderful." And she must have seen that slight flash of worry across my face. And she said, "No, don't worry." She said, "We have a saying in Africa." And she said that if the universe gives you twins, the universe will provide for them. And
Nice.
and that's all she said on it. It turns out we got to know her and had a cup of coffee with her, and she worked with the United Nations. And this was a saying from her region of Africa. And whenever things got a little tough, with the twins and parents of multiples, we did a whole bunch of research immediately as soon as we found out we were having multiples. Instances of abuse are higher, instances of anger, divorce, all of those things are higher because the demands are higher. And it's not
It's
that
more
raising
challenging.
multiple,
Yeah.
it's not that multiple parents have any, oh, we're martyrs. It's just the fact that there's 2 or 3 or 4, and the instances of abuse or domestic violence, those things go up depending on the higher order of multiples. So if you have 2 kids, it's at this level. If you have 3, it's at this level. 4, it's at this level, etc. And so we were pretty freaked out about that, obviously, and because no one says, oh, having multiples is an excuse for me to act badly to
No.
my kids or to my spouse or whatever. But one of the things I did is, after that lady said that to us, whenever things got a little hairy and I was worried about finances or how are we going to deal with this, I remembered what she said to me. And at some level, I believe that. Like, she said it with such sincerity. And,
Nice.
that I thought, I would hear her telling me that, and I would think, just breathe, unpucker a bit here, breathe, and remember that the universe gave you this, and the universe will help you get through it if
Beautiful.
you just open your eyes and look. Okay. And luck, I don't know what, but it was true. And it's remained true to this day. Not always the way I'd hoped, not always in a perfect way, not always in, the white picket fence, dreamland television version. But the universe has always provided that little bit extra if I was open to it and I looked for it.
Nice.
And I believe, to me, that was hope. I had hope,
Yep.
therefore I had belief, which opened me up to possibilities that if I hadn't been open to, I would have overlooked, and I would have been in trouble. I wouldn't have had enough money. I wouldn't have had enough whatever
That's
I needed.
beautiful. It's kind of like cycle. If I'm following what you're saying, you had hope, which created in you a belief that I'm going to be enough. I'm going to have enough. The universe is going to provide. It's all going to be good, right? Which then you could kind of relax and just be in that experience in that moment and say, it's all going to be all right, right? Which again kind of allows you to reinforce that hope, right? right? So,
Well, and now that the twins are getting older and they're adults, obviously,
mhm.
I'm so glad that when they were growing up, for those times that I remembered that and I just relaxed and enjoyed being their parent and being there with them at that time, because it is gone in an instant, as you know, and they grow up and they
Yeah,
go on with their own lives. And, you're sort of wondering, where did all that go? It was just yesterday I was changing diapers, and now, they're graduating from university, or in your
cats,
case, getting their
cats in the
PhD.
cradle and cats in the cradle and
Yeah,
the silver spoon. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That song always scared me. But
yeah,
it's, I think it's directly related to what you're saying here, because I think that understanding your wounds and understanding that they've existed in you, but you can let them go,
hmm
is really important. Because once you believe in that, once you have hope, then you can see the way to healing. You can start seeing the path,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, there's a great Chinese, and I always get it wrong, but it was translated into Japanese as Mu Kayu. I think that's how it was. And it's a belief, a philosophical statement, that light can only fill an empty room. And of course, if you have a room full of stuff, light can't penetrate in. And I've read it translated another way, that light can only penetrate through cracks in a room, right? Or a
hmm
window, or
Right.
an opening. And I think that life is very much that way, in that light or goodness or healing or joy or happiness can really only enter our room through a crack, or if we make room for it by removing the clutter that's filling that room, so that no light can get in.
Right.
And
Right.
I
Right.
think, for me, I equate that clutter to be pain or resentment, because I think that, and I read the whole thing, but my memory could be a bit fuzzy, is that, you know it it doesn't mention the concept in here about truly letting go, in, I don't know how to phrase it, but there's just that sort of natural release, I guess, is what is ultimately, if we can't let go, there's lots of things. Okay, back up. I'll explain it a different way. So this is talking about pain that we've had trouble with, right? That we're attached to and we can't let go. But I think in everyone, there's pain that we could have stayed attached to, but by luck or by our own resources, we've been able to open up and let the light in. And so that pain hasn't stayed with us. And I think that when we talk to other people, often they have solved what we're struggling with. And so, it's very easy for someone else to look at your problems and say, oh, well, you just do this and this, and then, everything will be better. That's what I did. But I think that we all have to really open ourselves in our own way, in our own time, maybe, to the messages that are coming in, the light that's being directed toward us, to open up that hope. So
Yeah,
I,
that makes sense.
I think
And
what
we
I'm
have to be
trying to say, and what
receptive, right? You're saying we
yeah,
have to be open, we have to be receptive, we have to welcome that, right? Welcome that intervention or that support, right?
and it can't be forced upon us. It's something that we have to make a decision
Right.
to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We have to invite it in.
And
All right.
I think so I was just going to say that I think if you don't believe that, look through your own life and you will find instances where you've already done that. And someone else may be stuck or struggling with exactly what you were able to let go of. And for me, that always gives hope. When you've had something happen, when you've had a traumatic experience, when you've had a failure, when you've had something turn out bad despite doing everything you could to make it turn out in a different way, when you've overcome that, that's cause for hope that you can overcome the next thing.
Yes.
So I know for me that it's often good to reflect on what I've successfully dealt with to
Yes.
give me more strength to deal with the things I'm having difficulty dealing with or addressing.
Right.
Does that
Beautiful.
make sense?
Well said, Scott Sweetman. Nicely done, sir. So this was
Thank
my contribution to our theme. Next week, it's back to you.
Excellent. Well, we're going to get that pumped out there. But I do think that this was a great topic. I do encourage people to have a look up at this document. There's a lot more here that Alan and I haven't talked about tonight. As you know, we don't sell things or promote things for financial benefit or gain or anything. When we find tools, we share them with other people, right? And you shared this with me and with our listeners because you believe it to be a good tool. And I would agree 100% with you. So if you want to look it up on the internet, Al can probably put it in his feed, but I'll go ahead and add it to mine as well.
Oh, you put in yours. You're good then, yeah.
Margaret Paul, Paul, PhD. Search it and it will come up, and it is part. Al sent me a copy from Inner Bonding, INNERBONDING.com. And the name of it is, scrolling back to the top here, probably Al, you know the name of this document off by heart. 6 Secrets to Profound Self-Love and Joyous Connection. And I agree with you, Al, that people get freaked out by titles like that unnecessarily. It's really just about trying to deal with open chapters that exist in your childhood and have become pain or non-positivity. There. Oh, look at that. Nice picture of the acapellas there. I love it.
Thank you. Okay, so there we go. So that's where it is. It's a free book by Margaret Paul. She's a doctor. She's super smart, been a doctor for 50 years or whatever, very knowledgeable about helping people. And basically the crux, and on Tuesday nights at 7:00, we're having discussions about this. Corolla and I and Diane McConnell, PhD, on Tuesday nights.
Join in on that, people. It's great.
And so basically the belief is that as you can find a way to fully love yourself, accept yourself, embrace yourself, then a lot of your life gets easier in a big hurry because you're going to automatically choose the better things, the better choices in people, the better choices in what you put in your body, the better choices in it. It's just like, it's kind of a natural thing that occurs, is, I believe, her main message.
And the first chapter, I think, is key. It's titled Willingness, and that's where it all starts. You have to be willing and open. And if you want to heal, if you want to change, if you want to grow, it all starts with hope and the belief and the willingness to change and grow and heal.
Beautifully said, Brother Sweetman. And let's wrap her up for tonight.
Okay, everyone. Thanks for joining the Acapellas, to Alan Friesen and myself, Scott Sweetman. We'll see you next week on the Hopeifiers.